Well, hello, welcome to Spotlight TV. I'm Dr. Larry Carnes, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today. We're excited to have a very special guest with us all the way from Australia. Julie, how are you today?
Hello, Dr. Larry. How are you?
I'm doing well, and how are you?
Well, beside having Lyme disease and being a survivor of it, I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay.
Good to have you. Do this for us. Introduce yourself to our viewing audience.
Look, I am the author of Australian Lyme Crimes, the Global Disgrace. The reason I wrote the book is that we have a dreadful tick situation in Australia that the government refuses to acknowledge. Upon my research, I realized that you in America have nearly 500,000 people a year diagnosed with Lyme disease. Now, that means that you have very, very sick people over there. They're dying, they're uncared for, they don't get any government recognition, they can't be cared for because the carers that can provide support charge awesome amounts of money and people can't afford it on their insurance, or they don't have insurance. Basically, Lyme disease leaves you ravaged.
Yeah.
It affects every single system in your body. It's neurological. It will create symptoms like Parkinson's disease, MS, motor neuron disease, dreadful rheumatic arthritis, shaking, vomiting. Look, you're a train wreck of absolute disease caused by co-infections that ravage the body as part of this dreadful, dreadful disease.
Okay, I noticed something here as I was doing some research. You talk about Lyme disease initially being a mysterious type of disease discovered in 1976 in a cluster of children in Lyme, Connecticut, here in the USA. Thus, it got its name from that. And then you say that it's a disease that can be transmitted from human to human. Talk to us about that.
Look, all right, originally, Plum Island was a research center for disease control and tick harvesting. So what happened was the American government repatriated Nazi war criminals to build up an arsenal of bug biowarfare. So we presume that what happened from Plum Island was that at the end of the experiments, those ticks were dumped on your grounds, and they've bred up, they've infested people and made them very sick. It was criminal activity. It was deliberately manufactured, if you like, to cause dreadful harm and to be really, really difficult to diagnose. Now, the American stance on it and the Allied forces of the time was to never treat and never acknowledge Lyme disease because it's a bioweapon.
A bioweapon manufactured by intentionally
by Nazi war criminals.
Yes, and so and then you're saying from that they released these infected ticks into the United States. Wow.
Yes, from Plum Island. But not only that, Fort Detrick in Maryland was responsible for breeding up more toxic ticks with bacteria and diseases like Epstein-Barr, anaplasmosis, and so on, to make them even deadlier. Now, those bacteria have US military patents on them.
Wow.
There's nothing natural about Lyme disease. And, you can get bitten by a tick, and I'm not saying the ticks that bit me may have been bioweapons, but initially they were, and their DNA has changed to such an extent that they're carrying all these lethal diseases.
Okay. Now, looking here, you say the information says the following story covers your personal battle with Lyme disease and the history of the collaboration of Australia, America, and Russia in their biological warfare. That speaks volumes. I mean, that really caught my attention when I read that. How did they collaborate to do this, these three countries?
Well, during the Cold War, the Allied forces, Australia, America, England, New Zealand, and Canada, signed non-disclosures that they would all research and develop tick biowarfare, but they would never treat or acknowledge because they knew they were doing the wrong thing. Now, in Fort Detrick, they were breeding them up in million-litre vats.
Wow.
And then they would aerosol them and spray them from aircraft over innocent civilians.
Are you serious?
I'm absolutely serious. It's hideous. It is the most disgusting story ever. And they did that to see how long it took for people to get sick and what their symptoms were. And let's see if this works on the enemy. I'm not sure that it was ever used on an enemy, but it was certainly used on civilians.
My goodness. Now, there are some chapters in your book where you covered some different things. We talked about corruption, ground zero, and I think you've touched on that a bit. And then you asked the question, what is Lyme?
Lyme disease is a spirochete bacteria that drills by stealth into every system in your body. It goes through, it drills through bone, it drills through muscle, it drills through nerve systems, it crosses the brain-blood barrier straight into the brain. So, you can develop, like I was developing dementia, I was developing Parkinson's disease, but it was neither. It was Lyme disease.
Wow.
It is the most disabling disease ever. And it was deliberately made to be lethal. It was deliberately made to disable.
Now, when you say deliberately made, and then so it was deliberately manufactured or made, and then the ticks were infested with it, or how did they actually infest the ticks with it?
Well, in Fort Detrick in Maryland, they were actually hand-fed by Dr. Burgdorfer, who is the namesake of the bacteria. They were fed by pipette in the laboratories full of these bacteria and viruses. And then they were bred up, so their DNA changed, but they still carried the markers of all these diseases.
My goodness. Okay, let's talk about this. Ignorance is deadly. Now that speaks volumes.
Well, it is deadly. I've been sick for, 7 years. And, look, I'm sitting upright today and talking to you, but I've been in bed for the last 7 days. A third of Lyme disease patients die from the co-infections. Under a third commit suicide because the system doesn't care for them. They're sick and tired of being sick and tired. And the depression that comes from the neurological damage is just so debilitating. They can't take it in.
My goodness. So now I'm listening to this. So you're saying that this thing, because when you say it can be passed on from human to human, so that means that it's contagious. But you talk about
it's not contagious, it's sexually transmitted.
Oh, so it's sexually transmitted from human to human.
Yes, like HIV AIDS.
Oh.
So what you're seeing right now, what we're seeing is these little babies being born with Lyme disease who have got, no chance of survival because they wouldn't think to diagnose the child with Lyme disease. And it's being passed on without parents often knowing that they have Lyme disease because they're in their early stages.
That's amazing to find that out. You say here, chapter 12 talks about it morphs.
Yes. What happens is it changes because it acts by stealth. It seems to become more and more toxic as it moves around the body. Now, it morphs into these other diseases, which is, Epstein-Barr virus, anaplasmosis, babesiosis, Morgellons disease, where fibers come out of skin lesions, which is also carrying a US military patent. I mean, the whole thing is sinister, absolutely sinister. And how the military got away with it, it's just all questionable. It's murder. But the Australian government was just as complicit too, because they were doing research and development in tick biowarfare as early as 1943.
My goodness. This is amazing information.
We don't have Lyme disease in Australia, according to the government.
You don't have it in Australia, but you are a victim of Lyme disease.
Oh, and there's about, 250,000 of us, but we don't have Lyme disease in Australia. It's
my goodness.
It's disgraceful.
So now I see something here. Chapter 18, you talk about the disgrace of Tuskegee. Now that caught my attention when I saw that.
Yeah.
We have 2 minutes. Now we have 2 minutes remaining. So, I mean, time flies. And so tell us a little bit about Tuskegee, and then we want you to disseminate information of how people can get in touch with you. Take about 30 seconds with Tuskegee.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that it's not the first time that the governments have been complicit in causing harm to people.
Now, that sheds a total light on it when you bring in Tuskegee and things that were intentionally done with syphilis and things of that nature. You're absolutely correct. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, so share with our viewing audience any information, contact information, email, website, anything like that. Take about 60 seconds to do that.
Well, this is the book, Australian Lyme Crimes, The Global Disgrace, which incorporates the whole world's Lyme disease problems. I'm available at Australian Lyme Crimes on Facebook, where you will find regular postings and all my information for contacting me.
Excellent. A wealth of information. I'm just blown away because I've learned and been introduced to so much. And when you begin to put it together, you've given us information where we can connect the dots. We want to thank you so much, Julie, for being our guest today here on Spotlight TV.
Thank you, Dr. Khan.
It's been a pleasure to have you, And we trust that our viewers will go out and get this book. Has a wealth of information, some things that I didn't know.
Be very aware.
Yes, so it brings awareness. I'm Dr. Larry Carnes. We want to thank you for viewing Spotlight TV, and remember to join us again right here for Spotlight TV. Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.